The
Draft Vehicle Emissions Trading Schemes Amendment Order 2024.
I call the Minister to move the motion.
I beg to move that this committee has considered the Draft Vehicle Emissions Trading Schemes Amendment Order 2024. It was the great Mancunian Daniel Adamson in the 1860s who envisaged a northern region from the Mersey estuary to the Humber estuary, and hence the Manchester Ship Canal. So, Mr Vickers, it's a great honour to serve under you today, and hope that one day one government of some ilk will actually finish his work and join up the northern region properly from Merseyside to the Humber estuary indeed. Now, the Vehicle Emissions Trading Scheme Order 2023, implementing the Zero Emission Vehicle or ZEF mandate, came into force in January this year and sets targets for the registration of new zero-emission cars and vans and a proportion of total new car and van sales. This instrument amends the Vehicle Emissions Trading Schemes Order 2023 with the purpose of facilitating the Northern Ireland Assembly's decision that Northern Ireland should join the scheme and make some technical updates. In doing so, the amendment brings Northern Ireland into alignment with the rest of the UK and represents an important milestone on the pathway for the United Kingdom to achieve 100% zero-emission new cars and vans by 2035 and net zero by 2050. At the time of the original order was passed in 2023, the Northern Ireland Assembly was not sitting. Due to the requirements of the primary powers used to create the mandate, Northern Ireland was unable to join the scheme's commencement, instead retaining a scaled version of the assimilated European regulations that had previously applied in the UK following Brexit. I am pleased to report to the committee that following the Assembly's return, it has chosen to support joining the ZEF mandate. It voted to approve this legislation and therefore approved Northern Ireland joining the mandate on the 14th of October. I would like to pay tribute to the work of the Minister for Infrastructure, John O'Dowd, and his officials in the Department of Infrastructure in the Northern Ireland Executive for their hard work in achieving this milestone, and I'd further thank ministers in the Scottish Government and the Welsh Government for their support. Once Northern Ireland has joined the ZEF targets and the carbon dioxide targets will be applied as a UK-wide average, meaning that the Northern Irish vehicle market by itself will not be required to meet the headline ZEF target in 2025, but instead be part of a UK-wide calculation. It also means that instead of having to engage with two separate emission regulations in the UK, one for Great Britain and one for Northern Ireland, there will now be a single framework for new cars and vans. And as a result, this measure is supported by vehicle manufacturers because it reduces the administrative complexity of engaging with the UK market. This measure is also supported by the charging industry, as it will give investors the certainty that they need to invest in Northern Ireland as it has done in the rest of the UK, where £6 billion of private investment has been committed to the end of this decade. The regulation as it applies across the UK is the single largest carbon saving measure in government and is of singular importance if we are to meet our climate commitments. In summary, Mr Vickers, this instrument brings the whole of the UK not just into alignment in terms of regulations, but also in terms of ambition when it comes to zero emission mobility. It gives investors confidence to invest in the transition across every part of our great nation and nations, and it will ensure that nowhere is left behind as our technology and economy evolves. I'm grateful for all committee members for attending today as well. I therefore commend the statutory instrument to the committee.
The question is that the committee has considered Draft Vehicle Emissions Trading Schemes Amendment Order 2024. I call the Shadow Minister, Greg Smith.
Thank you, Mr Vickers, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. To start, can I draw the committee's attention to my entry in the Register of Members' Interests. The Draft Vehicle Emissions Trading Scheme Amendment Order 2024 is, as the Minister has rightly said, very technical in nature, brings little change to the original order passed earlier this year, and for the most part simply brings the whole of our country under one set of rules, correcting the omission of Northern Ireland, but that was for understandable purposes, from the original order. The changes in the silo in which they are presented are broadly uncontroversial, and therefore the official opposition will not be dividing this delegated legislation committee today. What is slightly more controversial, though, is the limit of this order and the wider questions it poses about the government's approach to the ZEV mandate, our domestic automotive sector, and transition to a defossilised and decarbonised forms of private transport. The Labour Party have previously been clear that they wish to reverse the previous Conservative government's practical, pragmatic and sensible delay to the banning of the sale of new petrol and diesel cars from 2030 to 2035. Yet we have a relevant order before us today, Mr Vickers, which does no such thing. It leaves the 2035 date intact. So if the government are, and this would be sensible, Mr Vickers, leaving the 2035 date in place, will the Minister confirm that when he winds up? Or are we set to see more orders coming forward? And will that come with a wider debate in the main chamber of the House of Commons? And what of hybrids? Again, much talk in the media, but little actual legislation and rulemaking coming forwards. I gently ask the Minister to give the committee and the wider House clarity in this regard too. The importance of this point, Mr Vickers, is one of certainty for consumers and manufacturers alike. Today's order gives neither any confidence on the direction of travel this government intends to actually take when it comes to the detail. And this uncertainty is being played out in the real world. Real sales numbers, real demand for particularly battery electric vehicles, as well as uncertainty for our great innovators here at home as well as overseas, who are pioneering technologies around other forms of fuel, hydrogen and synthetics. It is a reality that consumers are turning their backs on battery electric vehicles. If you take fleet sales out of the picture, EVs are just not selling at all. The Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders say that year-to-date private battery electric vehicle demand remains down 6.3%. Robert Forrester, Chief Executive of Virtue Motors, has observed that manufacturers are delaying deliveries of cars until next year, fearing that immediate deliveries would cause them to exceed the government-set quotas. And in July, Stellantis announced that it would review its manufacturing footprint in the United Kingdom. So can the Minister explain why this order before us today does so little, just tinkering at the edges with no practical steps to solve the real-world problems that we face? And can he confirm what the government's actual plans are to ban the sale of new petrol and diesel internal combustion engine cars? Is there even a plan? And what confidence can he give to motorists and car manufacturers alike that this government actually does value, in a defossilised, decarbonised way, the freedom to drive?
No one is catching my eye. Minister to respond.
Thank you, Mr Vickers. I'd say to the honourable member that little has been learnt since the defeat 16 weeks ago. I would say that the last Secretary of State indulged in a culture war around vehicles and around 15-minute cities, where he spread conspiracy theories at the Conservative Party conference, where they messed about with the emissions targets of vehicles, where they criticised the Mayor of London for ULEZ and trying to produce clean air across our capital of our city. And it was a complete culture war that lost out because the British public were not fooled by the fact about what was going on about trying to divide people, either car owners or van owners, from pedestrians, from cyclists, and from improving the general environment in our city. But I would say to him on a substantive point around the commitment. The government is committed to phasing out new cars that rely solely on internal combustion engines by 2030. That means pure petrol diesel cars will be phased out by 2035, and all new cars and vans will need to be 100% zero emission, and that is our clear commitment. And then he said we tinkered around the side of the ZEF mandate. Well, the reality is that the UK market with ZEF mandate is growing faster than any comparable European market as we speak. The number of electric vehicles to counter what he said in the UK market has also grown by 13.2% on 2023. This is faster than Germany, France, Italy and the EU as a whole. That's not to say there are more challenges, but this government's going to face the challenges through our missions of both growth and decarbonisation, and I'm proud we were elected on this mission. Mr Vickers, this instrument, while technical, as the member for the opposition said, in nature, represents the shared ambition for the UK government, Scottish government, Welsh government, and now Northern Irish executive to decarbonise our road transport as we make progress to net zero. By bringing Northern Ireland into the ZEF mandate, we can ensure that every part of this country benefits from zero emission mobility and ensure that no community is left behind as we transition to a greener, cleaner future. I trust the committee has found this debate informative and that it will join me alongside colleagues in the Northern Irish Assembly, Scottish Parliament, the Synod, in supporting this legislation. Thank you, Mr Vickers.
The question is that the committee has considered Draft Vehicle Emissions Trading Schemes Amendment Order 2024. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order.